The worst part wasn't finding out my best friend had been sleeping with my girlfriend. The worst part was realizing my own parents had known for 2 months and said nothing. I found out on a Tuesday, which is such a stupid, ordinary day for your entire world to collapse. I remember because I'd had a good day at work. My team had just closed a commercial real estate deal I'd been grinding on for 4 months, and I stopped at a gas station on the way home to grab a Gatorade and a scratched-off ticket like I always did when something went right. I didn't win anything. I remember that, too. My name is not important. What's important is that I was 31 years old, had been with my girlfriend Megan for 3 years, and had been best friends with a guy I'll call my buddy. His name was Tanner. Since we were 15. We met at football tryouts freshman year, both of us too slow to make varsity but too stubborn to quit. We'd been inseparable since then. He was the best man at my older brother's wedding. He was the first person I called when my dad had his heart attack 2 years ago. I knew his social security number because I'd helped him fill out his apartment application when his printer broke. That's how close we were. Megan and I had been talking about getting engaged. Seriously talking. Not the vague someday kind, but the we should go to that jeweler on 5th Street this weekend kind. I had a budget set aside. I'd asked her sister what style she liked. I was 3 weeks away from buying the ring. When I got home that Tuesday, Megan's car wasn't in the driveway. That wasn't unusual. She worked late sometimes, and I hadn't texted ahead. But Tanner's truck was there. That was unusual, because he didn't have a key. And Megan barely knew him outside of group hangouts. Or so I thought. I walked in through the side door like I always did, through the kitchen. The TV was on in the living room. I heard voices, then I heard her laugh. The specific kind of laugh she only ever did when she was comfortable and relaxed and happy. And something about it sent a cold wire straight through my chest. Not jealousy, not yet. Just wrongness. The way you feel right before you realize a step is missing in the dark. I turned the corner into the hallway. I don't need to describe what I saw. You already know. I'll just say that Tanner saw me first. And the look on his face, not guilt, not horror, but that half-second of calculation. Like he was running the math on whether he could talk his way out of it. That was the moment I understood that this wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a drunken slip or a moment of weakness. This was something that had been going on long enough. That he had a default reaction prepared. Megan pulled a throw blanket off the couch and said my name. I turned around and walked back to the kitchen. I picked up my Gatorade from where I'd set it on the counter. I drank about half of it. My hands were completely steady, which was the strangest thing. I'd always assumed if something like this happened, I'd break something or yell. Or at minimum start crying. Instead I just stood there in the kitchen feeling the cold of the bottle, and staring at the grout lines between the floor tiles. Tanner came in about a minute later, with his shirt still untucked. He said my name. I said, "Get out of my house." He started to say something else, and I said it again, quieter this time, and something in my voice must have been different. Because he left without another word. I heard his truck start and pull out, and then it was quiet. Megan came in a few minutes after that, wrapped in her cardigan, her face already doing the thing where it was arranging itself into an explanation. I didn't let her start. I asked her one question. How long? She looked at the floor and said 4 months. I nodded. I asked her to please be out of the house by the time I got back from my brother's. Then I picked up my keys and left. I drove to my brother's house without calling ahead. He opened the door, took one look at my face, and handed me a beer without asking a single question. That's the kind of person he is. I sat at his kitchen table for 2 hours. Eventually I told him what happened. He called Tanner a name I won't repeat here, and his wife, who had come downstairs in her robe, just put her hand on my shoulder and said, "You don't have to figure anything out tonight." She was wrong about that, as it turned out. Because the next morning, I got a phone call from my mother. I thought she was calling to check in. She did that sometimes, random Tuesday calls, just to say hi. But her voice had a specific quality to it that I recognized from childhood. That careful measured tone she used when she'd already decided something. And was getting ready to explain it to me like I was the problem. I'd heard it when I got a C in chemistry junior year. I'd heard it when I quit a job she thought I should keep. I knew what it meant. She said she needed to talk to me about Tanner. I asked her what about him. She said she'd known there was something going on between him and Megan for about 2 months. She said she'd found out, by accident, had run into them at a restaurant in a neighboring town, had seen the way they were sitting together. She said she'd confronted Tanner privately, and he'd convinced her it was nothing serious, just a flirtation, and that he was going to end it. She said she hadn't wanted to upset me over something that might just go away on its own. I sat with that for a few seconds. Then I asked her, did she tell Dad? She said yes, he'd known too. And neither of them said anything to me. For 2 months, while I was saving money for an engagement ring. While I was asking Megan's sister about jewelry styles. While I was buying groceries and cooking dinner and sleeping next to someone who was lying to me with my parents' full knowledge and their silence. My mother said, "I know you're upset. But Tanner is family to us. We didn't want to destroy that relationship over something that might not." I hung up. I sat in my brother's guest room and stared at the ceiling for a long time. My brother knocked after a while and I told him about the phone call. He was quiet in a way that told me he was angry, in a manner he didn't fully have words for yet. His wife said, "Are you serious?" Just barely above a whisper. Like she needed to confirm the laws of physics, still worked the way she thought. I want to be very clear about something. I did not fall apart. I know that's not what people expect when they hear this kind of story. They expect the crying, the bargaining, the drinking, the dramatic confrontation. Maybe a plate thrown through a window. What actually happened is that something in me went very quiet and very focused, and I started thinking about what I needed to do. First thing I did was call the jeweler on 5th Street and cancel the appointment I had tentatively scheduled. The woman on the phone was very polite about it. Second thing I did was call my bank and remove Megan from the savings account we shared for household expenses. We weren't married, the account was in my name, and I had every legal right to do this. I also changed the billing address on my insurance, my utilities, and my magazine subscriptions, because I'd learned from a coworker's divorce that small administrative tangles have a way of becoming big headaches. Third thing, I sent Tanner a text. Not a long one. Just, "We're done. Don't reach out." He responded 3 times in the next hour with escalating explanations. I didn't open any of them past the first few words and eventually blocked his number. Megan had taken most of her things when I got back to the house the next evening. She'd left her key on the counter. She'd also left a handwritten note that I put in the trash can without reading past the first line, which started with the word "please." For about 3 days life had a strange underwater quality. I went to work, I ate, I slept, badly. I kept waiting for the emotion to arrive like a late flight. The big grief, the rage, the thing that would explain to my body why everything felt so foreign. It didn't come all at once. It arrived in small, sideways pieces. Like at the grocery store when I almost grabbed her brand of yogurt out of habit. Or when I opened a drawer and found one of her hair ties, and stood there in my kitchen for 10 minutes, doing nothing at all. My parents called twice that week. I let it go to voicemail both times. My mother left a message saying she hoped I was okay, and that she'd like to talk when I was ready. My father left a message that was shorter, more gruff, and ended with, "We love you, son." I did not call back. What I did do was start talking to people. Not about Tanner and Megan specifically, but about my situation generally. I talked to my HR department about remote work options. I talked to a real estate agent, the same one who'd sold me the house 5 years ago, about what the market looked like. I talked to my financial advisor about liquidity. I did all of this quietly, methodically, because I'd realized something important. I didn't want to adjust to this life. I wanted a different one. The house was the key piece. I'd bought it when I was 26. Just before prices spiked, and I'd been lucky enough to refinance at a good rate. By the time I sat down with my real estate agent that spring, she told me I was looking at somewhere around $180,000 in equity, after fees and payoff. I asked her to list it. She asked if I was sure. I said yes. I had been offered a position with my company's Denver office about a year prior, and had turned it down, because Megan hadn't wanted to leave. The position was no longer open, but I'd kept in touch with the regional director out there, a woman named Patricia, who had once told me I was the kind of person they'd always make room for. I sent her an email in March asking if that was still true. She called me fax it the same afternoon. By April I had a formal offer in hand. Relocation package included. I told my parents I was selling the house and moving to Colorado in the same phone call. My mother said nothing for a long moment and then said, "You're running away." I said I disagreed with that characterization. My father got on the line and said, I was making a rash decision, and that I needed to think about how this would affect the family. I asked him, as calmly as I could manage, which family he meant. The one that kept a 2-month secret from me, while I was planning to propose to a woman who was sleeping with my best friend? He didn't have an answer to that. I told them I loved them, and that I hoped someday we could talk about all of this properly. Then I said goodbye, and I meant it. The house closed in early May. I was in Denver by Memorial Day weekend. The apartment I rented was smaller than what I'd had, which I'd expected. What I hadn't expected was how much I didn't mind. It was on the 4th floor of a building, in the Capitol Hill neighborhood, with windows that faced west, and every evening, I could see the mountains from my couch. I'd never lived somewhere you could see mountains from your couch. I didn't know that was something I needed until I had it. I made new friends slowly. The way you do in your 30s. Through work colleagues, through a recreational soccer league. I joined mostly to have something to do on Sundays. Through a neighbor on my floor who turned out to have grown up 20 minutes from my hometown and found this fact as absurd as I did. I wasn't lonely exactly. I was just in the process of becoming a different version of myself, which is a quiet, unglamorous business that doesn't photograph well. Tanner tried to contact me twice more, in the months after I moved. Once through a mutual friend who I think genuinely didn't know the full story. I explained, briefly, and she apologized, and didn't mention him again. Once through Instagram, a DM that I declined to open, and then reported and blocked. That was the last I heard from him. Megan I heard about once, through Megan's sister, who texted me about 6 months after the move to say she was sorry for what had happened and that she had no idea. I believed her. I thanked her, and wished her well, and that was that. My parents and I reached a kind of détente. Not a reconciliation, not fully, but a managed distance. My mother sent cards at Christmas and my birthday. I called on holidays. Short calls. Pleasant on the surface. Both of us carefully not touching the thing that sat in the middle of every conversation, like a piece of furniture we'd agreed to walk around. My father never brought up Denver again. Which I took as the closest thing to an apology I was going to get from him. Then, about 18 months after I moved, I got a call from my aunt. My mother's sister. The one who'd always been straight with me. She said she needed to tell me something and that she wanted me to hear it from her, and not through the grapevine. Tanner had gotten Megan pregnant. They'd been together since the fallout. Something I'd suspected but hadn't confirmed. She'd had the baby a few months prior. And now, according to my aunt, things were not going well. Tanner had lost his job, some kind of sales role he'd had for years, let go in a restructuring. He was behind on rent. Megan's parents had apparently cut off financial support when they'd gotten together, disapproving of the whole situation. And my mother. My mother, who had kept their secret, who had called me running away, who had said Tanner was like family. Had apparently been quietly lending them money, which had now run out. And Tanner had asked my mother to ask me for help. I want to be precise about what I felt when my aunt told me this, because I think precision matters here. It wasn't satisfaction, exactly, it wasn't gloating. What it was clarity. Like when you've had a noise in the background for so long you stop hearing it. And then suddenly it stops, and you realize how much space it had been taking up. I called my mother that evening. She confirmed everything my aunt had told me. She sounded tired and smaller than I'd ever heard her, and part of me wanted to feel sorry for her, because she was my mother and I loved her even after everything. But I had something I needed to say first. I said, "You knew for 2 months. While I was saving up to propose to her. You knew and you said nothing, because you didn't want to lose Tanner, and now you've spent the past year and a half lending him money. And I'm guessing the amount isn't small and you want me to step in," I said. She started to say something and I kept going. I said, "I want you to really think about what you're asking. You want me to help the man who slept with my girlfriend for 4 months, who spied my best friend, who looked me in the face for years and lied to me and then lied to you about ending it. You want me to help him because he made bad choices and is now dealing with the consequences of those choices. And you want me to do it while also processing the fact that the person who should have been in my corner, who should have told me the truth the moment she saw them at that restaurant, chose not to. I need you to understand that I'm not angry about that anymore. I made my peace with it. But I need you to understand that peace was purchased by me leaving, and I'm not undoing it." My mother was quiet for a long time. Then she said, very softly, "I know I was wrong." It was the first time she had ever said it. Directly, plainly, no qualifications. "I know I was wrong." I told her I appreciated her saying that. I told her I was not going to help Tanner. I told her that if she needed support herself for any reason, she should call me and I would be there. But that I was not going to fix the consequences of choices I'd had no say in. She said she understood. We talked for a little while longer, about nothing in particular, and it was the most honest conversation we'd had since before any of this happened. That was 6 months ago. Tanner, from what I understand, is working a warehouse job now and taking some night classes. I have no feelings about this one way or another. I hope, in an abstract sense, that his kid has a decent life. That's as far as my interest in his situation extends. I have a dog now. An Australian Shepherd mix I got from a rescue last fall named Bo. He is extremely energetic, and requires 2 walks a day in any weather and is the most straightforwardly good thing in my life right now. And I mean that without irony. I'm seeing someone. Early days, nothing I want to put pressure on. But she laughs at the same things I laugh at, and she likes hiking. And she thinks Bo is the greatest creature who has ever lived, which she is not wrong about. The mountains are still there every evening from my couch. On clear days you can see the snow on the peaks even in July. I sit there sometimes after work with Bo next to me, and I think about that Tuesday. The scratch of ticket. The Gatorade, the grout lines in my kitchen floor, and it feels like something that happened to someone adjacent to me. Not me exactly. A guy I used to be. I don't hate anyone from that chapter of my life. I don't have the space for it. What I have instead is a pretty good apartment. A dog who is currently asleep on my feet while I'm writing this. And the specific, quiet satisfaction of knowing that I made the harder choice on purpose. And that it was right. That's the whole story. I don't need it to end any other way than that.